The Vortex Empire, a sprawling dominion of countless star systems, valued power, beauty, and legacy above all else. For centuries, Queen Sarael had stood as a beacon of wisdom and grace, her reign marked by prosperity and peace. Yet age was a cruel judge in the empire. With her silver hair and once bright emerald eyes dulled by the passage of time, Sarafel's inability to bear an heir became an unforgivable flaw in the eyes of her husband, King Tharnis. Tharnis was a ruler consumed by the need to secure his lineage. When attempts to produce an heir failed, his affection for Sarael turned to frustration, then indifference. Driven by the whispers of his advisors and his own insecurities, he decreed that the queen was unfit to stand by his side. She was stripped of her titles and cast out, sent to the barren moon of Lysara, a place reserved for those who had outlived their usefulness. As the royal shuttle left her on the icy surface, Sarael stood tall, her tattered robes whipping in the cold wind. The grandeur of her former life felt like a distant memory, replaced by the biting chill of abandonment. Her voice, once commanding entire courts, now echoed against the empty canyons of the moon. "This is how it ends," she whispered to herself, her breath visible in the freezing air. But even as despair threatened to consume her, a flicker of defiance stirred within. She would not let her story end here, forgotten and broken. Using the last of her strength, she activated the communicator embedded in her exile's beacon, broadcasting a message into the cosmos. "To anyone who can hear this," she said, her voice trembling but resolute, "I am Queen Sarael of the Vortex Empire. I have been cast aside, deemed unworthy, but I am not yet ready to fade. Help me prove them wrong." Light years away, aboard the Starwind, Dr. Max Reynolds leaned back in his chair, a steaming cup of tea in hand. The ship's AI lyric hummed softly as it sorted through incoming distress signals. Max was a renowned geneticist and medic, celebrated for his innovative work in interspecies medicine. He had saved lives across the galaxy, yet the challenges he faced never seemed to grow old. "Another request from a mining colony," Lyric chimed. "Fifth one this week. And, wait, here's something unusual." Max straightened, setting his tea aside. "Unusual how?" "A signal from the Lysara system, originating from a single exile beacon. High-priority encryption, but the message is simple." Lyric played the recording, Sarafel's voice filling the cabin. Max frowned as he listened, his analytical mind already assessing the situation. "A queen, exiled for being too old to bear children," he mused aloud. "They really did her dirty, didn't they?" "She's not exactly your usual patient," Lyric said, "and Lysara isn't a vacation spot. Are you sure about this?" Max stood, his decision made. "She called for help, that's all I need to know." The journey to Lysara was fraught with turbulence as the Starwind navigated the moon's icy storms. When Max landed, the barren, wind-swept landscape stretched out before him. Donning his thermal suit, he stepped into the biting cold, his equipment slung over his shoulder. Sarafel's makeshift shelter, a crumbling structure left from a long-abandoned mining operation, stood out against the desolate horizon. As he entered, the sight that greeted him was both humbling and heartbreaking. Sarael sat on a crude bench, her regal posture still evident despite her tattered robes and gaunt frame. Her emerald eyes, though dimmed by suffering, sparked with a mixture of suspicion and hope as she regarded the stranger before her. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice wary. "Dr. Max Reynolds," he replied, setting down his equipment. "I heard your call. I'm here to help." Her lips twisted into a bitter smile. "Do you pity me, human? Come to witness the fallen queen in her misery?" Max met her gaze without flinching. "I'm not here for pity. I'm here because no one deserves to be left like this." Sarael studied him for a moment before nodding slowly. "Then let's see if you can do what no one else would." Without another word, Max began setting up his equipment, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The interior of the dilapidated shelter was stark and cold, with walls barely holding back the icy winds of Lysara. Dr. Max Reynolds set up his portable medical station, the soft hum of advanced human technology a stark contrast to the stillness around them. Queen Sarael sat on a worn bench, her regal posture intact despite her circumstances, her emerald eyes watching his every move with a mixture of curiosity and mistrust. Max glanced at her, breaking the silence. "Before I start, I'll need to assess your overall condition. This might feel invasive, but I need accurate data if I'm going to help you." Sarafel's lips tightened, but she gave a curt nod. Do what you must. He activated a small hovering diagnostic drone that emitted soft pulses of light as it scanned her body. The results began to display on his tablet. Malnutrition, cellular degradation, organ stress consistent with prolonged exposure to extreme cold. Yet beneath it all, there was resilience, a body that had been beaten down but refused to give up. You're stronger than I expected, Max said, his tone genuine. Sarael raised an eyebrow. You sound surprised. Not surprised, impressed, Max replied, glancing up from his tablet. Your body's fighting back, even in these conditions. That's more than most could manage. For the first time, her hardened expression softened slightly. A queen must endure, she said quietly. Over the next few days, Max began administering treatments. He infused her with nanobots to repair cellular damage and strengthen her immune system, carefully monitoring her response. He prepared nutrient-dense meals, designed to restore her strength while avoiding shock to her fragile system. Despite her initial reluctance, Sarael followed his instructions with the discipline of someone who had ruled an empire. Their conversations during these sessions were brief at first, but gradually the barriers between them began to erode. Max spoke about Earth, about the vast diversity of its landscapes and people. Sarael listened intently, her curiosity breaking through her guarded demeanor. You humans, she said one evening, as Max adjusted her treatment regimen, you have a strange resilience. You venture into the unknown, driven by, what? Curiosity? Foolishness? Max chuckled. A bit of both, probably. But mostly, we like to help where we can. It's what gets me out of bed in the morning. Sarael tilted her head, studying him. Help. Such a simple word, yet it carries more weight than most realize. By the end of the first week, Sarafel's condition showed signs of improvement. The color began to return to her cheeks, and her once labored movements grew steadier. For the first time in months, she felt a glimmer of vitality, an ember of the strength she thought she had lost. One morning, as Max conducted his usual checkup, Sarael asked a question that had been weighing on her mind. Why did you come here, Dr. Reynolds? I've given up trying to understand why anyone would answer my call. Max paused, his hands stilling as he considered his response. Because I've seen too many people turned away when they needed help the most, he said finally. I didn't want you to become another name on that list. Sarafel's gaze lingered on him, her expression unreadable. And what do you expect in return? Wealth? Fame? My gratitude? Max met her eyes, his tone steady. None of that. I just want to see you stand again to take back what's yours. For a moment she was silent. Then, to his surprise, she smiled, a small, fleeting gesture, but genuine. You're a rare breed, human. Max's treatments grew more ambitious as her health improved. Using a combination of human and alien techniques, he began targeting the deeper issues caused by years of neglect and exile. One evening, as they reviewed the progress, Max hesitated before broaching a delicate subject. I've been reviewing your scans, he said, his voice careful. There's something we might be able to address. But it's risky. Sarafel's eyes narrowed. Speak plainly, doctor. Your fertility, Max said, meeting her gaze directly. I can't promise anything, but with the right treatments, it might be possible to restore it. The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. For a moment, Sarael said nothing, her expression unreadable. Then she leaned forward, her voice low but firm. Do it. The days that followed were a whirlwind of experimentation and hope. Max pushed the boundaries of his expertise, combining Earth's most advanced reproductive technology with the unique biology of Sarafel's species. The treatments were grueling, but Sarael endured them with the same resolve that had carried her through exile. As they worked together, their bond deepened. Max found himself drawn not just to her strength, but to the intelligence and wit that shone through as her health improved. Sarael, in turn, began to see him as more than a medic, a confidant, an ally, and perhaps something more. One evening, as they sat outside the shelter under Lysara's starlit sky, Sarael broke the silence. You've given me more than I dared to hope for, Max. But why? Why go to such lengths for someone like me? Max looked at her, his expression earnest. Because you deserve it. Because you're more than what they tried to reduce you to. Her gaze softened, and for the first time in years, Sarael allowed herself to hope, not just for survival, but for a future. The cold winds of Lysara howled outside the fragile shelter, but inside there was warmth and purpose. Dr. Max Reynolds worked tirelessly, his focus unwavering as he monitored Queen Sarael's progress. The treatment was nearing its most critical phase, the point where hope teetered on the edge of possibility. Weeks of effort had led to this moment. The nutrient infusions and cellular regeneration treatments had not only restored Sarael's strength, but rejuvenated her body to levels neither of them had thought possible. Yet the most audacious part of the plan, the restoration of her fertility, was still an uncertain gamble. "You're quiet?" Max said one evening as they sat across from each other, the soft hum of the medical equipment filling the air. Sarael's emerald eyes flickered to his, the light of the machine reflecting in their depths. "I've learned that silence is safer than hope," she said softly. "Hope has betrayed me before." Max set down his datapad and leaned forward. "This isn't about blind hope, Sarael. This is about science, effort, and the resilience you've shown every single day." She tilted her head, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Your confidence is contagious, Doctor." He grinned. "I like to think of it as a side effect of stubbornness." The procedure to reawaken her reproductive capabilities was delicate and complex. Max utilized a hybrid approach, merging human nanotechnology with the advanced gene modification techniques of Sarael's species. The process required precision and patience, as any misstep could undo weeks of progress. As the treatments progressed, Sarael began to experience subtle changes, an increased vitality, a renewed sense of energy. Still, Max cautioned her to temper her expectations. "These things take time," he said, his tone careful. "We're working against odds, but every step forward is a victory." Days turned into weeks, and the bond between them deepened. Max's relentless dedication and Sarael's unwavering resolve created a partnership built on trust and mutual respect. For the first time in years, Sarael felt like more than the exiled queen she had become. She felt alive. The breakthrough came one morning, marked by a subtle yet profound change in her biometrics. Max, bleary-eyed from another long night of monitoring, stared at the results on his screen. His heart raced as the data confirmed what he had dared to hope. "Sarael," he said, his voice tinged with both excitement and disbelief. "It's working. Your body's responding." She turned to him, her expression guarded. "You're certain?" He nodded, a smile breaking across his face. "Not just certain, confident. This is real." For a moment, Sarael said nothing, her gaze distant. Then slowly, she reached out and clasped his hand. "You've given me what I thought was lost forever," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't know how to thank you." Max squeezed her hand gently. "You don't need to. Seeing you like this is thanks enough." The news of Sarael's recovery and renewed vitality began to spread, though neither she nor Max had intended it to. A stray transmission intercepted by a nearby trade vessel brought the story back to the Vortex Empire, where whispers of the reborn queen ignited a firestorm of intrigue. At the palace on Voritha Prime, King Tharnas received the news with disbelief and anger. His advisors, sensing the shifting tides of public opinion, urged him to address the matter. "If she truly has regained her strength," one of them said cautiously, "it could undermine your position." "Let her play her games," Tharnas growled, though his unease was evident. "She was cast aside for a reason. The galaxy will not be fooled by this charade." But the galaxy was already captivated. Across star systems, the tale of Sarael's resurgence spread, painting her as a symbol of resilience and defiance against injustice. And at the center of the story was the enigmatic human medic who had achieved the impossible. Back on Lysara, Sarael and Max remained focused on their work, oblivious to the growing attention. As her health continued to improve, Sarael began to speak of her future, no longer constrained by the bitterness of her past. "I don't want to return to the Empire as a queen seeking vengeance," she said one evening as they shared a meal. "I want to return as a leader who can inspire change." Max nodded thoughtfully. "That's a powerful message, and it's one they can't ignore." Their conversations often drifted to lighter topics, and with each passing day, the camaraderie between them deepened into something more profound. Sarael found herself drawn to Max's unwavering kindness and quiet strength, while he admired her courage and determination. The day of confirmation arrived, when Sarael, now glowing with health, approached Max with tears in her eyes. "I felt it," she said, her voice trembling. Life, it's there. Max's heart swelled as he scanned her with his equipment, the data on his screen validating her words. She wasn't just pregnant, she was carrying multiple embryos. The procedure had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations. You're going to be a mother, Max said, his voice thick with emotion. This isn't just a miracle, Sarael. This is history. She covered her mouth with her hands, overwhelmed. For a moment, they stood in silence, the weight of the moment enveloping them. Then she stepped forward and embraced him, her gratitude and joy spilling over. You've given me back more than my future, she whispered. You've given me hope. As the news reached the galaxy, the narrative shifted once again. The human medic who had defied the odds and the queen who had risen from exile were now the subjects of fascination and admiration. But for Sarael and Max, the journey was far from over. With her newfound strength and the lives growing within her, Sarael was ready to face the galaxy, not as a fallen queen, but as a symbol of resilience, hope, and transformation. And by her side, Max remained steadfast, his presence a testament to the power of compassion and determination. Together, they prepared to face whatever challenges lay ahead, their bond stronger than ever. News of Queen Sarael's miraculous pregnancy spread across the galaxy like wildfire. The idea of the exiled, too-old queen not only reclaiming her health but also carrying multiple children was a shockwave that disrupted political circles, social hierarchies, and cultural norms across star systems. In the Vortex Empire, the whispers grew louder, and those whispers quickly became shouts. In the opulent halls of Voritha Prime, King Tharnus was surrounded by his advisors, their expressions a mix of fear and intrigue. Reports of Sarael's recovery and her remarkable pregnancy had reached even the most distant corners of the empire. What was once a private scandal was now a galactic spectacle. Her return undermines your authority, said Minister Derricks, his voice taut. The people are rallying around her story, a queen who rose from exile to defy her fate. It makes your decision to banish her look short-sighted. Tharnus's hand slammed down on the table, silencing the murmurs. She is no longer my concern, he growled. Let her play the hero in exile. She won't set foot in this palace again. But even as he spoke, doubt lingered in his mind. If Sarael truly returned with children, heirs, the throne itself might come into question. On Lysara, Sarael and Dr. Max Reynolds were unaware of the political firestorm brewing across the galaxy. Their focus remained on her health and the well-being of the children she carried. The pregnancies were unique. Sarael's alien physiology combined with the effects of Max's hybrid treatments had resulted in something unprecedented. Multiple embryos thrived, each developing rapidly and healthily. One morning, as Max reviewed the latest scans, Sarael watched him with a rare softness in her gaze. You've done the impossible, Max, she said. Not just for me, but for these lives. Max glanced up, his smile tempered by caution. We're not out of the woods yet. Your body's adapting well, but carrying multiples is always risky, especially under these conditions. Sarael nodded, her resolve unshaken. Risk or not, I will see this through. They will live, and they will know the truth of where they came from. Max leaned back, meeting her gaze. And where's that exactly? She smiled faintly. From defiance, resilience, and the stubbornness of a human who refused to give up. As Sarael's strength grew, so did her resolve to re-enter the galactic stage. Her exile had been public, and so would her return. They must see me not as the queen they cast aside, but as the one who survived what they thought would destroy me, she told Max one evening as they planned their next steps. Max, ever pragmatic, voiced his concerns. You're gaining support, but Tharnus won't sit idle while you gather momentum. They'll see you as a threat. Sarael's expression hardened. Good. Let him see me. Let the galaxy see what happens when you try to silence someone like me. The day came when Sarael decided it was time to leave Lysara. The barren moon had been a place of exile and transformation, but it was no longer her prison. With Max at her side, she boarded his ship, the Starwind, and set a course for the Vortex Empire. As the ship approached Voritha Prime, Sarael's message to the galaxy went live, a broadcast carried across every communication network in the Empire. She stood before the camera, her scars visible, but her strength undeniable. Clad in a regal gown that Max had helped restore from her exiled belongings, She spoke with a voice that carried the weight of her journey. As the ship approached Vortha Prime, Sarafel's message to the galaxy went live, a broadcast carried across every communication network in the Empire. She stood before the camera, her scars visible, but her strength undeniable. Clad in a regal gown that Max had helped restore from her exiled belongings, she spoke with a voice that carried the weight of her journey. "People of the Vortex Empire," she began, her tone steady. "I am Queen Sarael, the one you cast aside. I was deemed unworthy, too old to fulfill the role I was born to serve. But I stand before you now, stronger than ever, carrying the heirs this empire was so desperate for. My exile was meant to silence me, but it has only made me louder." The broadcast ended with a declaration that rippled across the empire. Sarael was not returning as a beggar seeking mercy, but as a queen reclaiming her rightful place. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Crowds gathered in the streets of Vortha Prime, chanting her name. Former allies who had distanced themselves began sending messages of support, eager to align with the queen's resurgence. Even those who had once mocked her as the barren queen found themselves captivated by her defiance. Tharnis, however, was less impressed. The king's advisors urged caution, but his pride blinded him. "If she dares set foot on this planet," he declared, "she will be arrested for treason." But Sarael was already en route, her determination unshaken by the king's threats. The Starwind entered the capital's airspace, escorted by a fleet of loyalists who had rallied to her cause. Max piloted the ship with precision, his focus unwavering as they prepared for the confrontation ahead. "Are you ready for this?" he asked, glancing at Sarael. She nodded, her gaze fixed on the city below. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life." The landing was a spectacle. Crowds filled the landing platforms, their cheers deafening as Sarael stepped out, flanked by Max and a contingent of loyal guards. Her presence was magnetic, her every movement exuding the grace and authority of a queen who had earned her place through fire and resilience. Tharnis's soldiers approached, weapons drawn, but the sight of the crowd's overwhelming support gave them pause. Sarael raised a hand, her voice cutting through the commotion. "I am Queen Sarael of the Vortex Empire. If you wish to stop me, do so now. But know that you will face not just me, but the will of the people." The soldiers hesitated, their loyalty to the king wavering in the face of the queen's undeniable presence. One by one, they lowered their weapons, stepping aside to let her pass. As Sarael walked toward the royal palace, the people of Vortha Prime followed, their chants growing louder with every step. Max stayed close, his heart pounding as the enormity of the moment sank in. They had done the impossible, turned exile into a revolution. Inside the palace, Tharnis awaited, his fury barely contained. But Sarael was not the same queen he had cast aside. She was stronger, wiser, and surrounded by a galaxy that now saw her as a beacon of hope. The stage was set for the confrontation that would determine the future of the Vortex Empire, and the legacy of a queen who refused to be forgotten. The grand hall of the Vortha Prime Palace had been the site of countless decrees and coronations, but today it was a battleground of words and presence. Queen Sarael, her regal gown billowing behind her, strode through the gilded doors with the confidence of a ruler who had reclaimed her power. Beside her walked Dr. Max Reynolds, his expression steady, a silent reminder of the journey that had brought them here. The crowd inside was tense, a mix of loyalists, courtiers, and Tharnis's soldiers. At the far end of the hall, King Tharnis stood on the dais, his expression a mask of fury and disbelief. His once loyal queen, the woman he had discarded like an old relic, was now the center of a movement that threatened his throne. "Sarael," Tharnis spat, his voice echoing in the chamber, "you dare set foot in this palace after the disgrace you brought upon it?" The queen stopped at the base of the dais, her emerald eyes locking onto his. "The only disgrace here, Tharnis, is your arrogance. You cast me aside, thinking I was no longer of value. But I stand here today, carrying the future of this empire, while you cling to a past built on cruelty and vanity." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Even Tharnis's own advisors exchanged uneasy glances. The revelation of Sarafel's pregnancy had shaken the foundation of his rule, and her words only solidified her position as a symbol of resilience. Tharnis's hand tightened into a fist. "You are nothing without this human," he sneered, gesturing toward Max. A pathetic attempt to reclaim what was never yours. Max, calm but resolute, stepped forward. What's pathetic, he said, his voice cutting through the tension, is abandoning someone who gave everything for this empire. Sarael didn't need me to reclaim her strength. She had it all along. I just reminded her of it. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, and Tharnas's fury boiled over. Arrest them, he roared, his soldiers hesitating before stepping forward. But before they could act, Sarael raised her hand, her voice commanding. If you lay a hand on me or my allies, you will not only face the people of this empire but the galaxy that now watches us. Do you truly wish to become the villain of your own story, Tharnas? The soldiers faltered, their loyalty to Tharnas wavering as the weight of the crowd's support for Sarael became clear. One by one, they stepped back, lowering their weapons. Tharnas's composure cracked as he realized his power was slipping through his fingers. His voice trembled with desperation as he addressed the crowd. She has manipulated you all. She is a relic, unfit to rule. Sarael ascended the dais, standing face to face with the man who had once been her partner. Her voice was calm, but carried the weight of her journey. You fear me because I survived what you thought would destroy me. You fear me because I am not bound by your shallow definitions of worth. But most of all, you fear me because I have what you lack, compassion and vision. She turned to the crowd, her voice growing stronger. This empire deserves better than a ruler who sees its people as tools. It deserves a leader who knows the value of every life, who has walked through the fire and emerged stronger. The crowd erupted into cheers, their support now undeniable. Tharnas, seeing his defeat, slumped into his throne, his arrogance replaced by bitter resignation. The days that followed were a whirlwind of change. Sarael's return was marked by a formal ceremony where she was reinstated as queen, her position secured not by birthright but by the will of her people. Max stood by her side, a silent but vital figure in the transformation of the empire. In the weeks after her return, Sarael began to enact reforms that dismantled the archaic structures that had led to her exile. She prioritized education, healthcare, and equality, ensuring that no one would suffer as she had. Her pregnancy became a symbol of hope, a testament to resilience and the possibilities of the future. One evening, as the twin moons of Vortha Prime cast their light over the palace gardens, Sarael and Max walked together, the weight of their journey finally giving way to a quiet moment of reflection. You've changed everything, Max said, his voice tinged with awe. Not just for this empire, but for the galaxy. Sarael smiled, her hand resting lightly on her abdomen. We changed everything, Max. Without you, I wouldn't be here. These children wouldn't exist. You gave me more than hope, you gave me a future. Max met her gaze, his expression soft. You had that future in you all along. I just helped bring it into the light. They stood in silence for a moment, the bond between them unspoken but undeniable. The galaxy had been forever changed by their story, a tale of resilience, love, and the defiance of impossible odds. As the stars above shone brightly, Sarael turned to Max, her voice filled with quiet determination. This is just the beginning. Together, we will show the galaxy what it truly means to rise from the ashes. And together, they did.